Tech by Tips.
Welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In today's video, we're gonna go ahead and build a Ubuntu desktop virtual machine, and we're gonna set it up so that we can use it to build the binaries for the Trinity core, specifically to be used in an Ubuntu server later. And then we're gonna actually compile the Trinity core binaries. So let's get ahead, and first of all, we're going to use Oracle VirtualBox to create this virtual machine. And I've already downloaded the image for the Ubuntu Desktop 2404. So that's what we're going to be using for this one. And okay, so we don't have a virtual machine. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into machine, and then we're going to say new. And in here, we're going to give it a name. We're going to say that this is our Ubuntu compiler. And we're gonna leave the default folder for the VM, and we're gonna here specify what ISO we're gonna use. I said that I've already downloaded it, so let's look for it. So here we go, we have the Ubuntu Desktop 2404 ISO, and that's what we're gonna use for this. So we open that, and then I wanna actually control what's going on in there, so I'm gonna say skip unattended installation in my case. And then we're gonna click on next. And then we're going to specify how much memory and processor we want for this. In my case, I have a computer that has 16, so I can use all the way up to 16, but I'm not going to do all that. I'm going to say 8. Let's give it 8, because the more CPU cores and the more memory you have, the faster it is at compiling. So in my case, I'm going to give it 16 gigs of RAM, and I'm going to give it 8 CPU cores. And that's going to be enough to compile pretty fast. I'm going to leave that as using BIOS instead of EFI. If you want to boot it with EFI, you just select it here. But we're going to click next. And then it says how much virtual disks do you want. For this, since we're just compiling, I don't think we need a lot, but I'm going to give it 40 gigs just to be on the safe side. And we click next. And now it gives us the prompt to validate that the information is correct. So I'm going to say finish, and now we have our Ubuntu compiler VM that has been created. Now we need to start it, and then we'll be able to actually install Ubuntu into the machine. So let's go and click start. This will trigger the virtual machine to start. So power it up and then boot, and here we go. And then here we have the options for Grub. So in this case, we're going to select try or install Ubuntu in this case. So press enter. And then it's going to start the installation of the Ubuntu operating system into this virtual machine. Here we go, we can see the installer coming up. I am speeding up the video so that we don't make this video 2 hours long. So I'm going to pause in moments where there's just a waiting period, and then I'll just resume once we get to actual action. Here we go, it has started. Let's wait for it to load. Alright, and now we have our prompt. We select the language. In my case, it's going to be English. And I click next. Now, accessibility and all that stuff, I'm not going to touch that, honestly. So next, English again. Use a wired connection, correct? And then if you want to update, you can do update now here, and then it'll give you any extra features that you need. I'm going to skip it for now. And then we're going to say install Ubuntu. And we want the interactive installation, or we can get the automated installation. So let's do the first option. And then in here, just the essentials, the web browser and basic utilities. That's what we want. We don't need all the extra crapware. And then I'm not going to do anything with this, so I'm just going to leave it as it is and click next. Here, now we're going to say erase a disk and install Ubuntu. And then we create an account. So this is going to be Trinity Core. And then we can say that this is Trinity Core Builder or Ubuntu Builder. And then the username Trinity Core sounds correct. And the password, I'm just going to put password for now. This is not really something we need to worry about. This is not something we're going to be using frequently. It's just to build what we need. And then I don't even need to require the password to log in. So next. Then the time zone is correct. And then review everything. Looks good. Install. So now the system is going to go ahead and copy all of the files into the hard disk so that the machine can boot Ubuntu later. So let's just leave it alone let it do its thing and come back later when that's done. Now, as we can see, it says that it is installed and ready to use. So now we can do that. So we can restart now. And then in the devices, we can probably go here and remove the disk, because it tells us to remove and then press enter, and then we press enter, and now it should start Ubuntu desktop from the virtual disk where we just installed the operating system. And here we are booting into the Ubuntu desktop, and it says that complete the setup. There are additional things, so we click next, and then I'm gonna skip the Ubuntu Pro, I don't need that, and then I don't want to share system data, and that's it, finish. We have our Ubuntu ready. You might be asking, hey, why are we doing this on an Ubuntu desktop machine? Well, some files are easy to download via curl in the command line, but sometimes there are some files that are necessary that are hard to get with the command line, and it's better just to use a browser to download them. So that's why for this part I would like to use an Ubuntu desktop machine instead of an Ubuntu server, which doesn't have the user interface. We are ready to start compiling the Trinity core, so let's go ahead and follow the instructions that we got from the trinitycore.info website. The first thing that we should always do is we should have an account that we're going to use for anything that is going to be related to the server. So in my case, I already created the admin account, which is Trinity Core, so I'm going to be using that one. So Trinity Core is going to be the user. Now that we're logged in as Trinity Core, everything is good here so far. Then the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we install dependencies that are needed to compile Trinity Core server emulator. So the first thing, let's do a sudo apt-get update to make sure that we have the latest version of the packages in our Ubuntu system. And then once that's done, we're going to do an upgrade also to make sure that they get upgraded. All right, and now that we have upgraded the packages, now we need to define what we want to install. And the documentation basically says that we need to install the following packages. So we're going to do a git, we're going to install clang, we're going to install cmake, make, gcc, g++, libmysql client development, libssl development, libbc2 development, libreadline development, libencourses development, libboost all development. We also need to install MySQL Server and p7zip. But I also like to add in here unzip and tmux, because those are utilities that I find that are useful to have when working with this. So first of all, let's go and do the installation here. It's going to ask us for the password, and then it's going to install all the things that we have specified. This is going to take a little bit of time, so I'll be back when that is done. Alright, this has finished, so let's clear the screen, and now we have to run two additional commands. We need to run the sudo update alternatives with the install flag for user bin cc, and user bin clang with number 100. So let's do this. Alright, so we have updated the alternatives, and we have to do the same, but the other one is going to be for C++ instead of CC, and here C++, and the rest is the same. So we execute that, and that's good. So we are done with installing the dependencies. The next thing that we have to do is we have to get our source code for the Trinity Core emulator. So I'm in my desktop right now. So in here we don't have anything right now. So I'm going to do a git. So we're going to be using git to clone our repository that is public in GitHub, but we want specifically the branch named master. And then we say, give me the URL, github.com/trinitycore.git. That's going to download the master branch of the Trinity Core repository into our local system. That's going to be a little bit of time because it's a pretty good amount of stuff that is in there. So let's just give it time and be back when that's done. Alright, it is done. So now we should have a Trinity call folder, which is right here, and that is the folder that has the repository source code. So that is great. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go inside that folder, and we should see all of the repository information here, so that's looking good. But then in here we're going to make a new directory that is named build, and this is where we're going to drop all the stuff that we're building in the server. So now we're inside the build folder, and now we're going to execute a command that is going to trigger the CMake binary to prepare everything to be compiled in our system. So for that, we're going to use the following command. And we pull that command from the guide here, which is CMake, and then it says we go back into the repository folder, and then we tell it to do a make install, and then we prefix it to dump our files into the home username server. But I don't want it to be there because I'm just compiling it to use it later in another machine. So we're going to run it this way. We're going to say CMake using the source code, and then we're going to save it into the home Trinity Core, which is the user that I'm currently running at, in the desktop, and then in a folder named server. So we're going to trigger that, and it's going to do all the necessary preparations for us to then be able to do the compilation. So now that that is done, let's clear this out, and we're going to do a make, and that is going to start the compilation. This process is going to take a good amount of time, so I'm just going to let it be, and I'm going to come back to the video when it is done, because even with 8 cores and 16 gigs of RAM, it could take probably anywhere between 15 minutes to 30 minutes just to do this part. If you were to run this on a much restricted hardware, let's say for example 2 cores and 4 gigs of RAM, then it's going to increase dramatically the amount of time that it takes to do the compilation of this. Okay, and just like that, it has finished. I'm at 100%, and if I scroll up a little bit, we can see that it built a bunch of stuff, and it built a target for the scripts, the world server binary, the extractor command, the map extractor, the vmap for assembler, the vmap for extractor, and the maps generator. So a bunch of stuff was created here, and that's important because those are the files that we need later to do a lot of things and to run the server. So if I minimize this, we still don't see anything here. We just see that we have the Trinity Core folder, and in there we have the build, and in the build is where we have the stuff right now that we have in the binaries. So we can see here we have the binaries, which is what we actually want, right? And it has the etc folder, which has the configuration files, and the libraries, which is the libraries that are necessary for it to run properly. So now we could, in theory, just grab stuff from here, but I just want to make sure that we grab it as if it was already installed. So we can clear out of here, and then we can run the make install command. We run this, and then that should do the installation in this machine of the binaries that we just compiled. And as you can see, it is already done. It is installing the project, and what it did is it grabbed all those files that we had in the Trinity Core folder and then moved everything to where it's supposed to be. So we specified that we want it to be in the home user desktop server. So now if we minimize this, we now have a server folder, and that server folder has the files that we need, which is the OpenSSL library, the configuration file examples, and when we come here into the binaries, we have the Battle.net server, which is for the logging. We have the world server, which is the one that runs the actual game. We have other tools that are necessary also to extract the information from the retail game of World of Warcraft. So we have the map extractor, the maps generator, the vmap assembler, and the vmap extractor. So those are utilities that we need to extract contents from the official game. And then we also have a certificate here and a key that are for you to use if you try to connect from outside, if you kind of make this public, right? So this is self-signed certificate and the key for that certificate. So we have everything that we need. So in theory, we could just grab this server folder and compress it into a zip file. Let's say to 10.2.7 Trinity Core, and then let's say Ubuntu, and we're good. We can create a zip file here, and there we go. Now we compress that, and then we can take this file out of this system, and we can then use it for Ubuntu server later if we want to run the actual servers in there. So let's just give it time to compress and put all that into a zip file, and we'll be back when that's done. Alright, it is done. So now we have a zip file here that contains all of that, and it's about 150 megs, so not bad. So now I want to take this out of this machine and put it into my Windows computer, so that then I can have it for reference later and I can use it in the future. So for that, what I'm going to do is in the virtual machine, I'm going to make some changes so that I can map a folder to my host machine, and then I can move that in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on devices, we're going to click on shared folders, and then here, and then we say that we want to share a folder. So we click here on the plus, and this is going to be what folder path we want. So I'm going to select the folder where I have the Trinity Core stuff in my desktop. So I select that, and then in here we have to specify where do we want to mount that on our Linux machine. So we can say something like home Trinity Core desktop and host. That seems about right. Auto mount that, and okay. We need to install the guest editions if we don't have it already in our system. So as you can see here, it says we need to run a command to mount it, but we need the guest editions. So let's do that real quickly. So on the devices, we can select insert get editions image. So then that should become available in Linux, as we can see now. Let's close this, and then we can then go here and execute the installation of the guest editions. So we can click here, run software. We put a password, and then it's going to install that. Alright, it says that we also need some other things here, which we do not have. So let's install this and then try it again. So let's go in here, clear. Alright, now that we have installed that, let's try it again. Let's go here, run software. And now it is installing the guest edition modules. Now it's looking good, but the resolution is kind of messed up. So let's fix that real quickly. Let's increase the resolution something more acceptable to us, like let's do this and see if that helps. Alright, that's much better. So now that we have this, then we should be able to run the command that we saw here. Alright, we need to be root, so let's sudo, and we have the host folder here now. Alright, so I'm validating the folder is there. I cannot see the contents because it's mounted as root. So then what we can do here is we can switch to root in here. Let's go into the home Trinity Core desktop folder and do an lsal. Let's try to see if the host is now readable, and here we go. Now we can see the contents of that folder in our host. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna grab that file that we put in the desktop, which is Trinity Core Ubuntu zip, and I'm gonna move that into the host folder. Trinity Core Ubuntu, there we go, and we're gonna move this into the host folder. So now it should be copying that zip file from our virtual machine to our Windows host, and that's done. So let's validate that by going into our host and checking that folder. And as we can see, we now have that zip file in here that came from Ubuntu, and it's 147 megs, so that sounds accurate. And if I open this, I can see the server folder, the bin, and all the stuff that we just saw in our Ubuntu desktop machine. So perfect. Now we have all the compiled executables for an Ubuntu Linux system ready for us to use anywhere else that we want. So we have compiled and we have extracted that to use later. All right, let me clean up this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I don't need, and I want to check something here. So let's open a terminal in here, and let's go into the server folder, and let's go into the binaries, and I want to check something up. So we have the Battle.net server and the world server. So let's see if that actually executes. So let's try the Battle.net server. And it says that it cannot open the configuration file for this, and that makes sense. And let's try the world server again, and it's going to give us the same error, and that's perfect. That means that it is trying to run, but we don't have the configuration files ready. So let's just fix that by going into that folder, and we go into the etc, and we are going to make a copy of both of these, and we're going to rename them, and then that'll yield us the proper name for the configuration file. So now we have the right configuration files. So now let's try again to see if it tries to run at least. So we're going to do again a Battle.net server, and there we go. We see the Trinity core trying to load. Obviously we don't have a database configured or anything like that, so it just exited because it couldn't connect to the database, which it needs to actually run. But we can validate that it is running. At least we know for sure it is running. So let's clear that out and then try the world server to see how it behaves. And again, just like with the other one, it is trying to run. We can see the Trinity core in there, and we can see all the information, for example, about the OpenSSL, and it just tells us that it cannot find a database, so it stops executing. But as we can see, the compilation was successful and the applications are trying to run. That's what we needed, and we have just confirmed that. So now we're done with this machine. We don't need to do anything else with this machine. So I'll happily just destroy it because it achieved its purpose. And that's going to be it for this video. We have successfully created a build machine, a virtual machine, and we have installed Ubuntu Desktop on that build machine. And once we had Ubuntu Desktop working, we installed all the packages necessary for compilation. We got the Trinity Core repository from GitHub, and we successfully compiled it. After compilation, we packaged those files so that we can use them later outside of this machine for anything that we want. And then we just validated that the binaries are actually working properly and that they run. So we're good. We have fulfilled our goal for this video. If you like it, please hit the like button. Share the video with people you think might find it useful. Subscribe to the channel if you've not done so. I see a lot of people watch my videos, but they haven't subscribed yet. That'll really help us a lot. And if you find that the videos are helpful, remember, I am not monetizing this channel. You should not see any ads on it. And I rely entirely on your support. So if you would like to support me to continue to create content like this for you of good quality and helpful, feel free to donate using the link in the description below or through Bitcoin if you want. And that'll certainly help us focus on the channel more and give you more quality content. So that's going to be for this one. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.